Condemned to live in the shadow of the mythical Fiat 500 for over 50 years, the 126 was nevertheless produced in greater numbers, and for much longer than its predecessor, which it succeeded without ever managing to replace in the hearts of enthusiasts. Built on the same fundamentals, this city car, almost as Lilliputian as its predecessor, was criticized for both its lack of charisma and versatility of use. In this way, on most markets, it only played a secondary role by offering services out of step with the expectations of a clientele seduced by more habitable, more comfortable models, capable of leaving the cities. Yet thanks to collectors, the time for revenge may have sounded for this funny machine whose charms, certainly less but now deliciously dated, are being rediscovered. In May 1972, but now deliciously dated. In May 1972, the second generation 500, because, for reminder, the first generation 500 is the Topolino, is 15 years old, and it's an understatement to say that the model has aged, even if it still retains a certain number of followers. Minimalist vehicle designed to motorize the masses of a country in Reconstruction, it no longer meets the expectations of the clientele at the beginning of the 70s, who discover with delight the new European standard in terms of city car, front-wheel drive, transverse engine, and, for the better off, a hatch at the back. With its subsidiary Autobianchi, Fiat entered this market segment as early as 1969 with the A112, before launching a January 27th 2 years later marketed under its own brand. In France and Germany, firms like Peugeot, Renault, Ford, or Volkswagen have already launched or at least are actively preparing their response to the Italian offensive. The goal now is to design small, practical, affordable cars, spacious enough for 4 people and their luggage, and equipped with mechanics that allow for road trips with a minimum of serenity. In such a context, with its rear engine performing like a tired asthmatic, its tiny interior and its monastic equipment, the 500 seems well and truly destined for the museum. Yet, against all odds, it is indeed an updated 500 that Fiat has chosen to develop to renew its entry-level range. While the badge of the 126 and its design try to relate it to the 127, the style signed by Gianpaolo Buono, entirely new and not taking any element from the 500, hardly creates any illusion. Just consult the car's technical sheet to uncover its true constitution. The newcomer is simply a cleverly rebodied 500. The overall architecture is identical, the engine, even though it has gained in displacement going from 499 to 594. Cubic centimeters comes from the ancestor, and if the length and width have slightly increased, the wheelbase of 184 centimeter has remained the same. Of course, the 126, however, includes several welcome developments, starting with a partially synchronized gearbox, while the performances evolve favorably. With its 23 horsepower, Fiat now claims a top speed of 105 km/h. This places the little touring car at the level of a Citroën of 4 horsepower, but clearly behind a Renault 550 unanimously considered as sluggish, but still capable of reaching 120 kilometers per hour. Even at a time when the highway network remains embryonic in most European countries, the capabilities of the 126 in this area frame the limits. It is above all a city car, and any road trip can quickly turn into a test as soon as you encounter steep slopes or have to deal with heavy trucks. For your information, the standing kilometer requires nearly 50 seconds, presenting exactly the same length as a Mini that appeared 13 years earlier. The 126 remains, however, faithful to some frightfully archaic solutions compared to the English one, and pays cash without conservatism in some respects. The trunk is thus practically non-existent, barely 62 liters. That's not a lot of bottles of Chianti, which most often relegates the luggage to the back seat, which itself anyway is practically unusable for any individual over the age of 4. The driving position is one of the most uncomfortable that can exist due to an intrusive wheel passage and non-adjustable backrests. The heating system is as ineffective as that of a Porsche from the same era, and the brakes are those of a car designed in the 50s. Even in this case, real progress should be noted compared to the 500. Obviously, for those who limit the use of the machine to urban or suburban trips at most, the 126 proves to be manageable and rather fun to drive. And then, of course, there is the crucial question of the selling price. Established on a technical basis that has been amortized for a long time, the model will remain for many years one of the least expensive in all categories, which is not a minor argument in these times of repeated oil shocks. Thus, in the fall of 1973, the little Fiat costs 8,970 francs, which is about 9,200 euros today. A Renault 450 then costs 8,900 francs. A 100 e-tron 2 104 requires 8,200 francs. You have to shell out no less than 9,490 francs to afford the charms of a Mini 850, while lovers of exoticism and cash-strapped fathers can always turn to the Skoda 100, priced at 8,610 francs. The 126 will thus have a respectable European career. But, despite regular updates, it will gradually become marginalized over the course of the 70s, and even more so from 1980, the date at which the Panda, certainly rustic but infinitely more modern, will supplant it as the entry model to the Fiat range. Yet, the 126, exclusively produced in Poland from 1979, will stubbornly refuse to die, even transforming into 126 BIs in 1987, endowed with a water-cooled engine and a rear hatch, finally providing access to a trunk worthy of the name. It will take until the presentation of the Cinquecento in 1991 for the car to disappear from Western markets, continuing from then on its long career in Poland until 2000 under the name of Polski Fiat Maluch. Yes, it's beautiful. Enjoying great popularity in a country where its production had started from its birth, the 126 will eventually reach a total of 4.6 million units, which is not negligible for a car supposedly unloved today despite a deficit of images compared to the very charming Quinientos. It is starting to interest some enlightened enthusiasts who are seduced by its very 70s typing, not to mention those who have not forgotten the characteristic bangs of the Transalpine twin-cylinder. In those who have not forgotten the characteristic bangs of the Transalpine twin-cylinder. As a good Italian of its time, the Fiat 126 was cruelly decimated by endemic corrosion, and the Malacca's prices did the rest. The survivors are therefore rare, and demand is slowly but surely increasing. You now have to count more than 6,000 euros to find an impeccable copy. In short, the Fiat 126 is to the 500 what the Diani is to the two horses. That is to say, a less popular derivative, but whose value will inevitably follow the increase of its elder. To the wise, you know what you have to do. And tell me in the comments, are you more Fiat 500 or Fiat 126? Before ending this video, one announced that the channel will take a break for several weeks. Indeed, this autoculture format where we trace the history of popular vehicles stops on the Carjagger channel. But good news, one invite you to a new channel, Caristoria, where you will find new videos on cars that have marked history, either because they have been great successes, or on the contrary, because they have been big successes starting January 7th. To the flop as we love them. One put the link to this new channel in the first pinned comment under the video. Don't hesitate to subscribe to it now so you don't miss the first one. Thanks to everyone. Bye.